Hello and welcome to wasmCloud community call for April 15th. Last week we did a collaborative roadmap session where we went through top issues that we requested from the community. We did a dot style voting of the folks who were on the call. We triaged from that list, and now we have a project in GitHub under wasmCloud for our roadmap, which I believe is basically the finalized version of our roadmap. Of course, we can make changes throughout the quarter, but the goal is to roughly scaffold out what are the big things that we're trying to hit as a community before we get to July. And little stuff, of course, can come in, and sometimes we learn new things, and we've gotta be agile about it, and that's okay to come into. But you create a plan, and sometimes the act of creating the plan is just as valuable as having the plan itself. So um, I'm gonna run through that, but before I dive into that, I'd like to introduce a new person that we have on the call today. Should I call you Doctor Brian Boynton?
Just call me Brian. That's completely
Okay.
fine.
Cool. Hey, Brian. Do you mind introducing yourself and how you ended up here?
Yeah, I'm an ear, nose, and throat surgeon switching over to tech, I guess. I'm still practicing, but I found the component model and I'm like, this is the way forward. This is it. This is the solution. And so I'm deep dark into Rust and WASI P3 trying to get that working. I have a registry for myself and others, but um, that's it. Build everything.ai, and it's working for synchronous, trying to get async going. So that's where I'm at.
Very cool. Are you building on top of wasmCloud for some of the stuff that you're doing, or are you more interested in some of the WASI P3 work that we do also as maintainers here?
WASI P3 for sure.
Okay,
That's my future. Yeah. Yeah,
cool.
it's just awesome. Yeah, it's really cool. I have
Awesome.
task driven searches through components, and it's just awesome. I mean, it's just that's the way architecture is going to be for software. That's the future
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, I have a couple of things in that space that we should totally call out. I think first one would be, let me share my screen. If you're not aware of a couple of resources, the first one I'd like to highlight is component interposition. Have you seen this project? And if I didn't hit the button. Okay, how about now? Um, are you able to see the component
Mm,
interposition GitHub? I'll
I
post
have
this in chat.
not. I'd love a link to that. Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Uh,
The work you guys have done is just amazing. It's just
yeah,
incredible.
thank you. Well, Elizabeth Gilbert, who is a PhD student at CMU, created this project, and she's made a number of other things, and she's actually, I think I've convinced her to write a blog post about this to share it more broadly, but she really goes through some of the power of what you can do with WASI P3 and composition, and specifically focusing on the WASI HTTP new middleware interface that we provide. And all the different ways that you can kind of compose components together, where you could even order your middleware. For example, making sure that authentication middleware is always first in the list of middleware that you go through. And she does a really great job of like explaining how all of this comes together. And even better, she gives you a shell script that like helps you get things building for P3. And so you should just be able to clone this and run this, and it will actually get you to something that works, which is a great place to start for anybody else who's like totally brand new to P3. This is one of the best ones. Um, Now, on our team and on the call is Eric Gregory, and he is one of the folks that are in SIG within the Bytecode Alliance. And they're responsible for being the maintainers essentially of wasi.dev and the component model book. And so he's going to be leading out, getting that refreshed and updated for some of the WASI P3 stuff. Is there any more you want to add there, Eric, that I maybe didn't hit?
Nope. That's going to be a big effort, and it's ongoing over the next week or two, especially. But yep, work is underway.
Yeah, and this is where a lot of that's going to land is basically at I'm going to drop that URL as well. Yeah, and tomorrow we have our WASI subgroup update. That is within the W3C, where we're focused on the spec side of the world and making sure that we've got a strong standard for that before advancing to phase three, which sort of is like kind of like the launch of phase three, launch of WASI P3, essentially. And the last few things that are holding that back, is having a full complete second reference implementation with 100% tests. Victor Adossi, who's also a wasmCloud maintainer, is working on that, and he's getting pretty darn far. So we're really in, I think, less than a month out. Aggressively less than a month. Aggressive goals, honest status is the saying there. I'll try to estimate what's within
Love
reason.
it.
Yeah. So I think we might pull it off. So yeah, there's our WASI P3 update. I usually try to include one in the community calls because a lot of us share those hats. Working, for me, I'm one of the co-chairs in the W3C space for WASI subgroup, and also in the Bytecode Alliance on the TSC there. But then a lot of us maintainers on wasmCloud also are maintainers inside the Bytecode Alliance as well. Okay. So this is our roadmap. I have it here, and essentially we were talking about this one, um, this feature here, which is what we were driving through. And our goal is to have basically full WASI P3 support by the end of the quarter. I think we can pull this off. We do already have the first part of this in the latest release of wasmCloud, but it's behind a flag, and the flag is not default. Where I would like to be is that it is a default flag by the end of the release. But I do still like the idea of keeping it behind a flag, at least for some time, in case folks are running systems and they exclusively only support P2 for whatever reason, for their pipelines or for their hosts. So I want to make sure that they still have the ability to disable it. And so that is one of our biggest pieces that we have. And actually, I call it ready for work, but it's not actually ready for work. It is totally in progress. We've already actually landed a few things since running our roadmap session from last week. And this one was from Jeremy, giving us basically a much more Kubernetes native way of doing routing. And so this has already been merged and released. So that one is already complete. So roughly, this is what our roadmap looks like. And I believe we already have some questions on some of the things that are here that we want clarification. So I figure let's dive into that, Aditya. And then if there are others that folks are interested in, we can go through them one by one.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I wanted to discuss the multiple backend instances. I think I've mentioned a point there that I wanted to discuss.
Oh, cool.
So the approach that is being proposed is to have named interfaces to override the backend implementation for the interfaces. But when it comes to the multipath HTTP routing, it's kind of an inverted logic where basically the runtime decides which components to invoke. So instead of having a named interface, there's I believe there's a YAML manifest that I've mentioned that has the interface specific override for each component. So I just
do you
wanted to
not have
discuss.
do you not have the case where other components inside your workload want to call each other? Like, I have an endpoint for accounts. Accounts goes as its own component and deals with the accounts CRUD operations, and then it says, okay, well, I need some information from user, and then it hits the user path. Do you have that use case?
Yes, because we have a workload where two different components export a HTTP incoming interface, and we do need the full HTTP, the path-based routing for that.
Yeah, so my main thought there was that if we know from both component composition perspective and from the host perspective, what different APIs, basically what the instance name is backing that incoming handler, then we would be able to have components call other components and also have the host do the routing. So with your change right now, which is awesome and cool, and we could just, get that first part in if we wanted, is doing it from the host side. But I think with that other implementation, it doesn't do it for the component to component side. And the second reason why I think it would be really cool to have that is that it would also work for composed components, which we don't support yet either. The kind of the third reason why I think this would be a cool way to do it is mainly that obviously this is the direction the spec is going. Now you could talk me out of making the spec changes potentially, but I know that there are places like Akamai and Microsoft and Fastly have all expressed interest in that design. And so I think even if I don't do it, somebody else will. So I want to make sure that we're charging towards that standardization path so that we're not too different and get left behind.
No, yeah, totally. Yeah, I get it. I was just playing devil's advocate and exploring
I
some
appreciate
other
it.
options. Yeah.
I mean, we
But
could
yeah,
definitely do it. I don't know if you saw my OG change to include names. I actually had a dynamic router inside it. And that was basically like, okay, I'm afraid I'm going to be too slow in the upstream. So, like, what will we do if it's not there? And I want to be clear, I am A-okay always with us adding effectively host magic to fill the gap between what doesn't exist in upstream and what we can do today. And that's essentially what you did is the category of host magic, which again, totally fine. So I think if we think that we can't get it done in let's say 3 weeks with something behind a flag, and we want to go faster, we should just go ahead and do the host magic. I think 3 weeks is pretty aggressive for getting it plumbed all the way through components and everything else. I did actually do an update with Luke Wagner on this yesterday, diving into it was him being like, Bailey, hey, your PRs, I want them updated a little bit to kind of deal with this extra syntax that I came up with called external ID. And people are asking me what's the status of it. So can you get back and do it? Because we're ready to merge it. So 3 weeks seems pretty possible, actually. So I think let me take my swing at it probably next week, and if that doesn't happen, we'll go the host magic route to get something solved sooner.
totally. Thank you for your clarification. I had another thing that I want to discuss, which is
Yeah,
with regards to the wasm-cloud secrets plugin.
yeah, let's
Uh,
talk.
so we have wasi config right now,
Yep.
but it only loads the Kubernetes secrets once during start time.
Hmm.
Is the wasm-cloud secrets meant to support use cases other than that? Because it does wasi config loads stuff into the environment, and I believe wasm-cloud secrets is basically meant to overcome that. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so a little background for other folks. Essentially, the way that things work today is that by default, the host build, when we build a host, it has a default set of plugins. In the default set of plugins right now, when we're deployed in Kubernetes, we are basically talking with our API to go fetch secrets, and that's from our other side of the world, the thing that actually talks to the actual secrets using the external secrets operator in Kubernetes, which is kind of the industry standard way to do that when you're in Kubernetes. And today we plummet straight through to WASI CLI environment, And we can also optionally put them on a blob called wasi-config. The reason why we opted not to start with wasmCloud secrets here and have the default mode basically be WASI CLI environment is that we wanted existing programs to, just work as best they could. And for people to, if they are choosing to be component native, choosing to like embrace the more expressivity that you can do with essentially WIT-defined capabilities, if you're opting into that, like opting into wasmCloud secrets, this was an additive thing that we can add outside our initial MVP when we shipped V2. And so I'm proposing that we bring back something that we did have in V1, but we de-scoped it out of our initial MVP. And so that was a long-winded, like, okay, here's some background. Now, Aditya's question is, will this run at runtime? Like, AKA, will this go fetch from some secret store? My initial thought was no, actually. Let me give you a background on why. And which is also why I'm keeping the API synchronous here. And if we wanted it to go, we would actually want to say async here and do this for P3. Okay, my main reasoning behind it, and actually, it's good for you to call this out, so I should probably add it to the ticket. But essentially, I want it possible so that we can, at deploy time, be declarative about all the resources that we need. Like, when I actually think of component native architecture and design, just like from first principles, one of the most important keys that we have to not lose, one of the most important properties that we can't lose is that it supports declarative resources, and that I can take a .wasm, independent of config and all this other stuff, and know, oh, it needs X, Y, and Z. And that is the biggest downside of why I don't like doing WASI CLI environment variable, is that it doesn't say what environment variables it needs. It's not clear at all. I want to be able to, at some point, be able to express that I need these specific secrets. And if I can't get them, fail. Like, don't even instantiate me because I can't work without them. So that doesn't solve this problem, to be clear, but it's a step in that direction. And the idea being basically, I want this to be a capability that only the host has, not necessarily that the component itself has this. So I want, the biggest part of this is that this is, since it's dealing with secrets, it's something that is done in a secure context. So I trust that the host plugin is allowed to go and do this. It will go and get the secret from my secret store, whether that's through the external operator, or if the benefit of having this interface here specifically is that it makes it easier to create host plugins that can talk to other things. So if we don't want to do the external secrets operator, one of the big motivations of this was, I think a lot of people just want to talk straight to Vault. Like, a lot of people have that direct use case. So this would let folks add a plugin that does exactly that. Now, I want it to be synchronous in that when I start a component and it's running inside a workload, or it's getting deployed and it's about to run inside a workload, I want something else to have already fetched the secrets that it needs before it actually runs. And if it fails in that process, then it doesn't get scheduled on that host, because potentially the reason why it failed is that the host didn't have the right permission to be able to connect to, let's say, Vault in this scenario. And so that's what allows us to like retain the property of remaining declarative throughout the whole pipeline. And we're explicit and declarative in our workload deployment. So like, taking even a further step back, what is workload? Our workload deployment spec has n number of components and one service inside it. And then it has config and secret values inside it. And the main reason why we were very expressive about the individual config and the individual secrets that we're passing in is that we didn't really have the expressivity that we want inside a component inside WIT to be able to be declarative about the resources that we need. So because we couldn't do it there, we put it in the workload deployment. I'm expecting to be able to bridge that gap in the future, potentially with the same thing that I was saying I want to use actually implements for. Is kind of my main idea on how I was going to bridge that with something for wasmCloud secret, and having a specific external ID for the secrets that I need for wasmCloud secrets. That's sort of the even more meta idea for why I think that's important to have in the spec. So, I'm sorry, that was a lot. Did that make any sense at all?
Yep, that made perfect sense. In fact, I wanted to push out a project that I've been working on. It's called wasm-to-env. It basically takes a wasm file and it uses, I believe, Walrus, and
Yeah.
it goes through all the deterministic pathways, and it specifically looks for WASI CLI environment and WASI config store get, and it returns those specific environment variables that are located at that offset. And
That is so awesome.
yeah,
That is what
and
I wanted to see in the ecosystem.
yeah, and I've been able to get it to work, and it works pretty good.
Can you drop a link? I want to pull that up.
Oh yeah, let me.
I am going to do one little plug. If you haven't tried it out, there's another thing that I think is a spiritual successor to Walrus, called Worm, that will give you even more component APIs. And, you know, I shouted out Elizabeth's component interposition project before. Elizabeth is the maintainer of Worm as well. And a lot of her good stuff is in here, like all the good. So you might want to check that one out. But I'm going to bring up your project here. This is what I'm talking about. You get it. This is exactly where we want to be. Now this one is kind of similar to also another project that I've been collaborating with Elizabeth on, called Splicer. And she's got a concept in here of an adapter component, which is essentially what you've built. What you've built is effectively an adapter component, in that it is also like this other cool project that if you haven't seen, you should also check out, called wasi-virt. Have you seen this one, Aditya?
I have not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So this one I want to revisit in the world of P3. But essentially it will virtualize and give you declarative deploys for each one of these WASI interfaces, including environment. Now, and it will bake it in, just like you did. And this is P2 specific. I think we can do so. Guy and I came up with a design for this as sort of like we kind of got stuck with P2 composability constraints. Where what we wanted was for each one of these to be its own modular component. And what we ended up with is one component that we build. It's like, okay, since we only get one composition, you get one Uber virtualization component, knowing that in P3 we'll be able to make it modular. And that I think is the future. So the combination of what you did, revisiting wasi-virt and or using tools like Splicer to be able to build that, I think we can get to some pretty sweet stuff. Yeah, Liam?
Aditya, I'll link in wasmCloud Slack an example that Bailey and I did on stage. We've done it a couple times, and I'll link to the video as well. I'll put that in there here in the next hour. Okay.
Yeah.
Brian, if you're not on our Slack yet, you can just go to slack.wasmcloud.com, and it'll let you click right through and join the community.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, more questions on just the wasmCloud secrets one specifically?
I have a question. So the goal here is Wash will then inject in the secret into the component. So
Basically,
that's kind of
if
the high level.
yeah, the step would be instead of reading an environment variable off a WASI CLI environment, the component would import wasmCloud secrets. And then it would run git. So it would say wasmCloud secrets git, and it would get a reference to the secret. And then this isn't a security thing. I want to highlight this reveal step. It is completely for expressivity that people could add in for auditing and logging and like knowing at what point in a component did reveal get called. And it's only important actually in composed component use cases. So imagine you have a top level component and it knows, you know, hey, I need all these secret keys. Like I have one thing that goes and talks to DynamoDB and I need the API key for that. And I've got another one that writes to Postgres for whatever reason, right? So like I've got like kind of a sort of document store type thing, and I've got something that maybe is dealing with more CRUD like account management. And so I've got two different secrets, and I actually, as a component, have composed in two components that deal with those two different properties. Like I have one that manages my account component, and I have another that is sort of like uploading documents, like taking a picture of somebody's license or something like that, right? So it's like two totally different operations. So each one of them are their own component, and it's all composed together in one top level component, which is the app. The app may say, all right, I need these API keys for these two things. And then it passes that key down to the subcomponents, but they only get the key for the resource that they actually need and not all the keys. And you could do a virtualization of not giving all the keys by doing these essentially adapter proxy components, like what Aditya built. You could say, all right, you only get composed, when you get WASI CLI, you only get this one, and when WASI CLI calls, you only get these keys. It's a little weird, a little hokey, versus having this API of reveal where we say, okay, top level app component does a get component, second component here actually runs reveal on exactly that secret. And so I know that not only did you go and get the secret, but you also used it. And I know which component instance inside an entire composed graph, which one actually used it. And again, this is not like necessarily a security feature. It's completely that we can add a lot of different expressivity about what the component graph is doing.
Gotcha. And then the secret will be stored where?
So today it's essentially in memory inside the host. And then when you run git, it's still in memory on the host. So this resource is owned by the host plugin. The host plugin itself has the secret ref. And that is also kind of an interesting property of using resources for this problem versus using, just like a string primitive. When you run reveal, you get a secret value, and that's when it's in memory inside the component.
I get you. And then that can be logged. That's a brilliant solution. I need to add that to my vault.
Yeah, there's a lot of tricks there. And I mean, hey, the whole idea is like, what can we add in wasmCloud that like is generally industry standard and useful to just about anybody, right? We want wasmCloud as a platform to be the picks and shovels you need to build any type of platform. Yeah, Aditya?
I had a question. To make it secrets backend agnostic, we would use external secrets at the runtime operator layer, I believe, or would that not be the case and we directly go for Vault?
So the default implementation, I think I did actually remember to call this one out. Yeah, the default will still be the external operator with Kubernetes. Like effectively, the only change to somebody that's using things today, they could now add a component that imports wasmCloud secrets. So like almost no change in behavior other than you get something that's more expressive about what you're doing and being able to reference secrets. Later, you could do more interesting things with your platform, like we could put a lot more observability specifically around you're messing around with a secret. The other thing that this would eventually enable is doing things like, ooh, that is actually typed as a secret. So like the challenge with WASI CLI and ENV is that you've lost all typeness about it. All you know is like, this one might be totally fine to log because it's like, this is my logging level. And the other one is like, this is my API key. So the general approach, what everybody does is just like, be careful. And instead, we can say, okay, let's make sure if it has a type of wasmCloud secret, we can actually trace through the code and prove whether or not it's okay. The way that other tools existing today are like, let me look for the word key and let me look for the word password, like it's so weird that that's how modern software is written. And we want to still like, make sure those use cases still work, but we can do better.
Yeah, there's a lot of heuristic-based determination, which we want to avoid.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there's so much more we can do, but you gotta, crawl, walk, run. This is the first step. Get the types. That was good. Any other ones we want to go through?
The HTTP client plugin, which is in progress, is that
Oh,
to
yeah,
reference the is that with reference to the outgoing handler that we've been working on?
it is. Yes.
Yeah. So I'll just reference those two there.
Hope you don't mind. Yeah. So we've got this one here. I know I've been slow to come in here and respond. I just rocked up and I was like, I think I broke what you did. And that was basically all I had left in your comment. I think we should, if you're, 54 minutes ago. Heck yeah. Yeah, I think basically do the builder pattern. Let's make sure this works for both. And I just hadn't had a chance to like totally dive deep on it. It is going to run into something else. Actually, no, it won't run into this at all. But since I already said it out loud, let me just show you this one thing. This is relevant for the other direction. And I think we'll touch some of the same code, and that what I found when I was running micro benchmarks is that the construction of our store context is like once I solved this, that's like we were roughly 4x slower than WASM time after WASM time added this new feature. And I have a fix already that basically implements this, and when I measured that, I was still missing, like 1x basically. And the 1x, like 10% of our time is actually just the reconstruction of our store context because we do it in a threaded way. And we do it in a threaded way because the volume mounts themselves are async. And I'm like, I think I can make all that sync. And then if I make it all sync, then it's just all, simple, fast CPU calls. And anyway, since I'm mucking about in your store context, I'm probably gonna break you again, but maybe you should beat me, and then I'll adapt all of these. But yeah,
Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that. And yeah, just for context, I will try to implement it around the P3 builder pattern as well.
cool. Yeah,
Because I believe those are distinct types with the socket trait.
they are. I made them separate because I ran into a bug actually. So I've got a little to do in there for P3 where I run .collect. You need that because there is a legitimate async bug that I ran into that we're getting fixed in upstream WASM time, and then I can back that back out. But that also I think is going to be fixed, relatively soon. But that's a large part why they have different function calls is they have to have different run times.
Yeah, yeah, thank you so much. That's all I had to ask. I don't have any more questions.
Cool. Anybody else? Any more that would be fun to talk through? We essentially this is what the roadmap looks like now. Jeremy helped me a ton earlier today where he helped just run through these and get tickets filed for some of the dot voting that we did. And roughly like we tried to leave little breadcrumbs that we kind of like got all of these groups together and filed. And for the most part, we've handled them. I wasn't quite sure what to do on these two, mainly because I don't think we heard what scheduler is desired. And just as a taster for anybody that feels strongly, maybe you can help me file some issues around it. Some schedulers that I'd personally like to see is that it would be really straightforward to create a Knative host. Like it is super in reach. And that would be fun because then that would work in some existing ecosystems. We've had on and off Nomad in the past, although after HashiCorp doing HashiCorp things, Nomad's really fallen out of vogue. But hey, the clients are Apache too, so I'm totally chill if we want to include that as an example. One that I'm personally think would be really useful for most people is ECS as your scheduler. And in that kind of same vein, Cloud Run inside Google Cloud, like a couple of these might be pretty neat. What I'm not, and there's another one. I think it's called Oh boy, I hate it's on a stream because my memory's so bad. I'll just say it's something like Akri. There's another one that's for IoT and edge development that might also be cool. Now, I had tossed this one out as an option for something that we could target as a community, but folks didn't really bite on it too hard, so I did not bring that into the roadmap. But I think if we were, I think these two would go hand in hand because a lot of folks use those in together. Yeah, Liam?
Haley, what about something as simple as like a flat file? You know, where would that go? Like if you think about like an edge deployment that is delayed, disconnected, intermittently late, and you know stuff like that. What do you think the option would look like for something in that case?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would argue that's already what wasm-dev is. Wasm-dev takes a config file and loads that component, and you can pass it a local file ref. And that is that, and you can load a component and a service. I think that I would just continue extending that. The config YAML for Wash is meant to basically be a developer-friendly, limited version of what you can do in a workload deployment. And if you want to do more in a workload deployment, then maybe just use a workload deployment, then use a workload deployment. So I think in the world that you might want to run a lot of things that are disconnected, like without an external scheduler and you want a flat file, I think that flat file is literally just lots of workload deployment YAMLs all shoved into one or in a directory, and then it loads straight from that. And all that would do is just run, all it would be is a tiny little script starter that's just like workload start, workload start, workload start, workload start, and then that would be it, right? And it would just take the workload deployment, which you could already do with what we have called washlet. So inside our host, we have a couple different hosts. Actually, a lot of people don't realize that. So you can run wasm-dev, you can run wash-host, and you can also mess around with washlet. And washlet's probably the closest to what you're asking for here. But for anybody that's interested, it's really easy to DIY your own host. We designed it that way so that you just need another embedding of wash runtime crate, and then you can. It's just a different type of start mode.
Thank you so much, Bailey. That was really informative. We should maybe think about getting a doc together on the pastricadels there.
Yeah, but again, it's like if you're running DDIL and you're disconnected, I would argue that you're not always disconnected. I would argue that, in a lot of cases, you actually want an agent that's still reaching out to a hub and that you're actually a spoke. And so in a hub spoke architecture, instead, I would have an agent that gets information whenever it gets connected. Otherwise, it's, otherwise it's just wash host. Like that's all it would be is already the host that we have with a little agent that is the thing that actually is talking out to the remote host. That is how I would design most IoT edge solutions, not necessarily like flat file. Flat file would be like, I've got a box that I'm never going to update again. Let me go shove it out somewhere and leave it. But
just want to shout out.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to shout out real quick. We do have documentation in the runtime section that talks about washlet and breaks down when you might want to build a custom host, use washlet, things like that. So if this is something that you're interested in, definitely check that out.
Yeah, check this out. Nice job, Eric. I forgot this was here. Yeah, and we have a host builder, yeah, that helps you do all of this. Exactly. So I think the answer for most IoT edge again is this one. This is the one that we basically are doing inside Kubernetes, but is also would be really great for hub spoke because and the hub being your Kubernetes cluster and spokes being your IoT host that is still just communicating over NATS, and NATS being the thing that effectively is acting as that like agent that I was talking about. Nice job, Eric. Thank you. And actually, we had other docs that you wanted to give a shout to. Do you want to tell me where to open?
Sure thing. So our newest docs, and this is unrelated, but that hopefully will be useful to some folks. They are in the language support section under TypeScript. And specifically, I want to call out the file system and configuration docs here. So we have, for a while, had in our operator manual instructions on using file system resources in Kubernetes volumes, providing those to components, but we haven't had docs on how to actually consume that from the component authorship side. So this is filling that gap, and the configuration page does something pretty similar with consuming configuration data that you may have provided in the various ways that you can do that in wasmCloud v2. Both of these have companion pages in the operator manual talking about how to provide those things to the system. Worth noting also the file system page. It starts with the HTTP service Hano template that we have in our TypeScript repo, and then it adds the file system functionality, but we also added to the TypeScript repo the complete sort of end state of this page. So you have a ready to work with template with file system functionality if you want to play around with that.
Yeah, so basically you're saying you started with the Hana just so you could show what it takes to add it. And that's why the doc does that.
Precisely.
Got it. Okay. Will you show me, let's bring up the operator changes that you did that are companion to this. Is it the file systems and volumes?
Yeah, and those are actually pre-existing pages. Those aren't new. But like you say, they're kind of companions to those developer side pages that are new.
Cool. Yeah. Anything else folks would like to see in this area? You got Eric, who's the best doc writer there ever was. Here, good time to put a bug in his ear for other things you want to see. We did on the roadmap capture one thing. Maybe.
Yeah, it was host plugins versus WASM
Services
services.
and
Yes.
when to use them. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so we do have this one as something that we already want captured on our roadmap to add a lot more explanation around, and other examples too. There was also an example ticket around it. Awesome. Well, that is everything that's on the agenda today. So given that, are there other topics people want to go into, questions they have, things that are challenging? Yeah, Aditya.
So I've been running into a use case where I'm using wasmCloud messaging with the NATS host plugin.
Yes.
And I was wondering if it was possible to use NATS JetStream to do something like a message replay rather than just fire and forget. And with that, would folks be open to that and to make a change to wasmCloud messaging?
I think what I would love to see is a NATS-specific WIT interface. If you want my strongest preference is NATS gives so many more things than the common denominator, like what a generic off-the-shelf event bus provides. And the semantics around is this send once or is this especially when you're starting to talk about durability of the message itself, it's so specific to the different event buses. And I've always wanted this, for what it's worth. Like, this is something I've always wanted to see, and I've seen some pretty awesome people make their own, but I don't have access to their WIT definitions. But I have seen this in the wild, where folks have gone and just created basically a WIT definition that's specific to NATS. I would love to host that in wasmCloud. I think that using wasmCloud messaging is nice and that you get some portability, but I think it's very, very, very rare that people basically jump around event buses. That's like changing databases.
That's what I thought, because NATS seems to be the only one, or a limited one of them, to have some sort of persistence for the messages. And wasmCloud messaging, it's more of just a plain event bus. So doesn't really support that. So I just like get what you mean by having a NATS-specific WIT interface, and I think I'd be keen on implementing something like
Cool.
that.
If you are planning to do it in this quarter, please create an issue and let's go ahead and add it to the roadmap. I think people would really like to have that. Do consider the case on local dev loop on that one. And also, big shout out to somebody else in Slack. Was it today? It might have been today, could have been yesterday. What's time? But they were asking us about could they do NATS connectivity with the wash dev loop. So if you had a NATS plugin, it would be a much more natural fit for wash dev and the wash host rather than the trick that we're doing today, which is very much like everything's like for developers, it's all local, no dependencies, it's all in memory, it's just a file system.
Yeah.
Like we've been trying to keep it tiny.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. It would get a lot easier to include NATS into the wash dev loop as well. So hopefully, if I find time today or tomorrow, I should be able to create a request or an issue request over on the wasmCloud repository.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to get everyone's thoughts on it. It's a lot collaborative than you think. So please let me know.
Nice. Yeah, I think, one line that you and I have to, or well, us and all the maintainers on wasmCloud have to decide is like, what do we want in tree? Like what dependencies do we want to maintain in tree? Because every time we add another plugin, that's, another maintenance path, another dependabot update, all that kind of stuff. We already depend on NATS. So like this one's like a no-brainer to include, right? If it's like, some weird, not everybody's going to use it type dependency, then I think we might want to go back to the contrib model, and have a couple, like a wasmCloud inside wasmCloud contrib, have a couple different plugins that people could community maintain. That way we don't have any trouble releasing wasmCloud because some esoteric dependency couldn't get updated or something like that. That does apply to this one, just saying. Just like an FYI. I'm particularly interested in Nat's part of this in particular. One other reason why I was a little reticent to update wasmCloud messaging is that well, it's directly based on WASI messaging, which is in draft and was kind of churning. We created a wasmCloud messaging version so that we could put a stake in the ground and not have it change underneath people. And same thing with wasmCloud secrets. Like I mentioned, a lot of that is just straight from Luke. Who's obviously one of the creators of WebAssembly and the component model and drives a lot of the standard. We created wasmCloud namespace versions because they're not a standard yet, and so we host them here. And once they become a standard, we will provide adapters to get them to the WASI version. And so anyways, wasmCloud messaging, I can send you a couple links, Aditya, if you want to see what it looks like to try to come up with a common denominator across all event buses. But there's one GitHub issue in particular that had 65 comments. And honestly, I just don't want to open that Pandora's box again. I want to just kind of leave it and not modify it if we don't have to.
Exploring WRPC over WebSocket for messaging.
Oh, is that what you're interested in, Brian?
Yep, that's what I'm building for my registry. It's exploring, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Comes with challenges.
There's tricks. There's tricks there. So right now, wasmCloud itself doesn't depend on WRPC today. wasmCloud v1 obviously architecturally was totally dependent on it. We learned some hard lessons, like make sure it's real obvious to everybody that they are making a network call. And no magic behind it. And you kind of hate to see it because Com learned this very hard lesson too, and we got to learn it again. But I think with WRPC, it's really nice in that you have kind of an IDL that maybe people who are doing component model stuff, that's their natural lingua franca. But I think you might be interested in the support that we already have today that's built in with gRPC, protobuf, which also can be upgraded to WebSocket. So, you know, there are some things that just work and have a huge ecosystem around it. People hate Proto-C for other reasons because it's native code, and that means, you know, folks have to deal with Proto-C. And you know that, anyways, every choice has its trade-offs. I just, yeah, I want to make sure it's clear that, you know, there's a lot of choices that you could go there. You know, I think my recommendation for you is probably gRPC, since I'm doing it in places and it's working great. So I can endorse it. The other part is, I think you could do a WebSocket API directly, which might also be interesting, kind of similar to WASI HTTP. And that might also have its own hidden dividends in that, you know, you're really clear about the type of call you're making. WASI HTTP is not written to support kind of like WebSocket upgrade, because it's written to just immediately adapt to HTTP 3, which, saying that might actually be literally what you want. And maybe you should just be doing WASI HTTP with gRPC. Okay, all right.
Web transport on Cloudflare, I'd be jumping for that too.
Oh, Cloudflare supports HTTP 3 now. It's actually a lot of their work is the reason why a lot of this exists. And in all the Rust crates too. They were the ones that were leading out a lot of that effort. Now, transport in other places though, oh my goodness, no. The moment you start like stacking networks, HTTP 3 starts not working.
Yeah, they're close. It's not quite making it to their workers yet. So if that hits, I'm ready to switch over.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like I've been following it for years now. So, but yeah, and I guess it's worth calling out that we do support it today in wasmCloud. So there you can immediately start playing around with it. That's part of our HTTP server embedding inside both our WASI P2 and WASI P3 implementations on our HTTP server. And it's also something Aditya is going to have to worry about in his client. Well, we're at time. Thank you everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. It was a good, lively discussion. As always, post in Slack, ask questions, and don't feel like our roadmap's totally closed yet. If there's something really important to you that we didn't capture, because I know a lot of people watch this call after the fact, please file issue or post in Slack, and we'd love to address it.